Hey you folks, Quillian here, and welcome to, I guess, a Let's Play of Hearts of Iron 3. I was recently playing a game of this and tweeting about it, and a lot of people got excited and interested for the possibility of a Let's Play, specifically as the Soviets, what I'd just been playing. And so I thought, you know what the heck, let's go ahead and do just that. I'm playing Hearts of Iron 3 with all the expansions. That's, Semper Fi, For the Motherland, and Their Finest Hour. And the expansions definitely add a lot of stuff, so I definitely recommend if you're going to play, get all the expansions. This comes on sale quite frequently. A lot of different bookmarks that we can start from, including some custom scenarios, which change things quite a bit. I'm just going to start from the 1936 bookmark. It means we're going to have a lot of setup time. There's going to be quite a few episodes before there's any combat whatsoever, but it gives us the ability to really influence the state of our nation in a more significant way, as opposed to, say, the 39 start, which starts with Germany having just declared war on Poland, which was guaranteed by the Allies, which means the United Kingdom and France have declared war on Germany, and basically World War II has kicked off at that point. So this will give us some time to do that. So 36, and I'm going to play as the Soviet Union. One thing to note, there is these victory conditions in the game, and every side needs to have 15 of them enabled, okay? So this is the common term, the communist side. There are three sides, of course, the Allies, the Axis, and the common term. And these are some of the goals that I could pick. 15 of them are chosen by default, and to win the game, for your side to win the game, you have to complete, I believe it's 12 of these things. So you don't have to finish all 15, and you can move it around. In particular, what I think we're going to do here, and I left all these as default last time I played as the Soviet Union, and I won, which was not an easy thing to do. But you can definitely win as is. I'm going to take off the one to control Tokyo because that sounds pretty darn difficult. And instead, I'm going to pick the one to have Turkey. Where is Turkey? Turkey being part of the common term. Now, the country of Turkey doesn't necessarily need to exist. It's just those 4 provinces need to be part of the communist side of things in some fashion. Either I have to, say, annex that territory and add it to my country, or we can puppet Turkey, or maybe even just force them to install a communist government and then convince that communist government to actually join the common term, which is a little easier to do, but once they're communists, but still. Anyway, we're going to mostly do that. I'll leave everything else on default, and we are going to go play. We've got a lot of ground to cover at the start here. I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible while still trying to give enough information so that new players who are trying to learn how to play the game may still have... May still get enough background to go there. It's going to be kind of a fine line to walk. One of the things I will note, especially if you're playing as the Soviet Union, zooming out really far tends to cause the game to lag pretty considerably. So, and it's very tempting because the Soviet Union is very, 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 very large. Consider, like, when you zoom in, like, this is the size of a province over here, and actually these are some of the bigger provinces. Especially if we go into our area where we're more developed, you can see the provinces are minuscule. And when you move a unit around, you can move it into all these individual provinces. So this game is a massive scope. Also, if you don't know, like, the game starts in 1936, and every tick of the game is 1 hour. 1 hour advances. So if I let this play and we wait for a thing to happen, it will go from midnight on January 1st to 1 a.m. on January 1st. It is absolutely, absolutely crazy. The pace of this game and the scale going on. If you've played any other Paradox Grand strategy games, this will definitely be one of the largest. So, before we start messing around with any of the units, oh, also, if this looks different, it's because I use the unit counters as opposed to the unit sprites. I mean, the unit sprites are kind of, interesting to look at, but the counters tend to show you a lot more just at a glance, and most people who play a lot of Hearts of Iron prefer the counters because it's easier to tell what's going on, and we'll explain what the heck these things are a little bit later. I'm going to quickly go through all of these tabs here, get some initial setup going. One thing to note about the Soviet Union, what do we have going for us? We have a lot of resources. We basically don't have to worry about any of our energy, metal, rare materials, or crude oil. We should have enough of that, and assuming that we can process enough of the crude oil into fuel, we should be okay there. And the only other resource is supplies, which is just a question of our industrial capacity. We don't have an unlimited industrial capacity to start off with, that is to say the number of factories we have. But because we have so many supplies, we're really incentivized, I think, to build a lot more industry. has the Soviet Union. Some countries, like Germany, for example, I don't usually worry about that because Germany actually has pretty good industrial capacity to start and will be limited a bit more by the number of resources that they've access to. So building more factories doesn't necessarily get you more stuff because you may just simply not have the resources to feed into the factories. But I think as the Soviet Union, you're actually in a really good position to do that. So most likely we'll do a little bit of that. We have a lot of manpower. We will have a lot more as we change some of our policies as well. Currently, we suffer from relatively low national unity. National unity, the way this works is every country has these victory point provinces. So you can see here Novgorod is in green and when I'm in victory point mode. And if I mouse over it in tooltip, it tells me it's worth 2 points. Here we've got Veliki Luki. I'm not going to say any one of these provinces' names correctly, so just deal with it. Is worth 2 points. If we find Moscow over here, it's worth a whopping 30 points. When you are getting conquered, when someone is, overrunning your territory with troops, every time they walk into a province, they gain control of it. But most of the provinces don't matter, except in terms of like winning a battle and winning a war, rather, except for the victory point provinces. When the number of victory points conquered exceeds your national unity, your country surrenders and you have no choice about that. So right now at 50% national unity, if 50% of the victory points in my country were conquered by, say, the Germans, the Soviet Union would simply surrender. So this is pretty low right now, but it will go up a little bit later as we do the Great Purge, and there's a few other things we can do. All right. Let's take a look at diplomacy over here. I'm probably going to do very little with diplomacy as the Soviet Union. One of the biggest things you can do is you get these triangle over here, which represents the every country in the world and where they stand in terms of the allies, the Axis, and the common term. Common term right now has 2 or 3 members: the Soviet Union, Mongolia, and Tuva. I believe Mongolia and Tuva, sorry, are both my puppets. So they don't really have much of a choice in the matter. And other than that, the only person who's kind of close is Xinjiang over here. And they are drifting towards me at a certain pace. I could go and make sure that happens, maybe a little sooner, maybe a little bit more decisively, by influencing the nation. I would spend some of my diplomatic influence to swing them over to my direction a little bit faster. And I think that's probably... That's probably fine to do. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once they drift all the way over here, and if they join the common term, then I will no longer have to influence them. It'll actually automatically stop. Once you're in a faction, you cannot leave it. You are there for life. The leader of the allied faction is the UK, and it starts off with these guys, most notably France is the big ones. United Kingdom and France are the big members of the Allies at the start, and the Axis is only Germany, although Japan and Italy are basically guaranteed to join because of a variety of events and other things that are going on. So you can basically count on them, if nothing else, will be part of the Axis. But there's quite a few people who are nearby. Austria, although Austria will join Germany in a somewhat of a different fashion with Anschluss. Manchukuo is drifting towards the Allies, but is also a puppet of Japan. Drifting towards the Axis. Once Japan joins the Axis, I think Manchukuo will just do it, and I don't think they have a choice, so it doesn't really matter where they are. So, there's a couple of people that you could potentially swing over to common term. It would be very nice if we could get, say, Turkey to do it, but Turkey's government is mostly... Like, there are very few, it doesn't have a communist government, right? So, depending on what government is running a country, it influences their likelihood to drift towards a certain size. And there's other factors involved, including relationship. But we really don't have, I think, much of an ability to influence people over here. We'll have to get them to join us via warfare more than anything else. So I don't think I'm going to influence anything else. You can spend a lot of your diplomatic influence also doing trades. For example, if we sort here, this is by energy. If I sort it this way, these are the countries with the biggest energy deficit. Now, the Philippines are a puppet of the U.S., so I can't trade with them. I could trade with the Netherlands over here, offer trade agreement, and we could, buy, sell energy in exchange for money. And you can raise relationships that way, because every time you set up a trade agreement, big or small, it improves your relation. So if you want to make friends with someone, one thing you can do is set up a lot of little tiny trade deals with them, which will boost your relations, and then makes them more likely that they may join your particular faction. But not only that, is the better your relations, the better the price you'll get on trade deals. So you set up a lot of small trade deals to boost your relationship, and then once it's relatively high, you set up a big trade deal so that you can either buy something cheaper or sell something for more money. But I find trade to be kind of tedious to work on. I'm going to go ahead and automate it, especially since I'm not particularly worried about using trade to raise relations in the most effective manner. I'm just going to hit this button to automate that. You can actually automate all of diplomacy over here, but overall we're fine. So I'm going to get that going on. We've got some decisions over here. When certain criteria are met, we can enact a decision. Usually you want to do that because they're usually pretty powerful, and some more decisions may present themselves or will present themselves as the game goes forward. So that is all I'm going to do for a setup here. Production, I'll probably come back to, well, I'm going to come back to this throughout the entire game. I don't think I'm going to do too much right here. We will talk about our industrial capacity. That is how many factories you've got, basically, and how quickly you can pump things out. This number will change through a variety of ways because of political decisions that we take, and events that might happen, and of course just building more factories themselves. You can allocate your industrial capacity in a variety of different categories using some sliders. Consumer goods is very important because you have dissent over here. This is how pissed your people are, basically. If you're not producing enough consumer goods, they'll get pissed. If you are producing more than the needed amount, dissent will go down. And usually you want to keep your dissent at exactly 0. Well, there's no usually. You always want to keep your dissent at 0. And so if you have positive dissent, you're going to want to spend a few more on consumer goods. Give some people some extra, I don't know, magazines and canned food and radios or something like that so that they get a little bit happier. Production involves actually building new stuff, which is this queue right over here. We start off with 3 ships in queue. As the Soviet Union, one of the reasons I think it might be a good pick for beginners, the big size of the Soviet Union does complicate things dramatically. But you don't really have to worry about a navy, and in fact, I think I might just cancel these completely. It depends. I may want to continue to have control over the Baltic. I'm not going to really have to protect trade convoys. I think you could sort of go either way. I suppose for the sake of simplicity, I think I'm just going to cancel these. Or tell you what, I'll leave this submarine fleet is very nearly done. So I'll cancel the other 2 and I'll let this finish, and then we can have a little bit more of a presence in the Baltic. Especially since the German Navy is most likely going to be busy more with the UK. So we'll see what we can do. If we can keep control over the Baltic, it'll be nice. We can always do some shore bombardment later on, but that's like years and years and years away. So we're going to come back to queuing some stuff over here later on. I don't tend to like to mess with these sliders. I find it kind of annoying to keep having to recheck the consumer goods all the time to make sure it's optimal, for example. Supplies is another one you sort of have to worry about a little bit. Supplies are used by your military. They're like bullets and canned food and stuff like that. We do have a big stockpile of it, so you don't have to worry about having this exactly. You can, you probably want to stockpile a bunch of extras before the war starts, but other than that, you're pretty flexible, because once the war starts, you'll use a lot more supplies. Reinforcing your existing troops if they've taken any losses, which will happen even at peacetime, just as, you know, training and various attrition happens, and upgrading to the latest version of all the troops. You can see we actually have a big need for that. At any point, you can actually just click on this button here. It'll automatically set the slider to the right place, and it's gray. If you right-click on a slider, you can lock it or unlock it, so it turns gray when it's locked, so then it doesn't get moved, whereas if you unlock it, then it'll shift around. I don't like to automate my production, but I do like to automate the assignment of industrial capacity, and early on, you can either prioritize the upgrades, reinforcements, or production. So early on, I like to prioritize production, and then it'll automatically put any extra in other places, especially, say, supplies, so you build up your stockpile some more, and it should automatically keep consumer goods where it is. It's off right now, but the consumer goods, I believe, gets processed at 2000 hours, and I think then is when it'll automatically set the slider to the right area. So you don't have to worry about micromanaging this, and I just enjoy that so much more. There's something to be said, because you always do get a little bit of attrition to locking reinforcements at slightly above 0 to just try to maintain your troop levels a little bit, but we're gonna have plenty of time to upgrade our troops and reinforce them before any actual fighting happens. So I'm mostly gonna focus on production, and we're gonna add some stuff to the queue relatively soon. Let's go to the technology screen. Okay. Tech tree in Hearts of Iron is gargantuan. There's a lot of stuff over here, right? Well, there's not just this. This is the infantry tab only. There's also armor. Escort ships, that's small ships. Capital ships, the big ones. Bombers, fighters, industrial technologies, secret technologies, including helicopters and nuclear bombs. Theory techs, which are a little harder to explain, we'll get there. And then you've got your land, naval, and air doctrine. These are not technologies, they don't upgrade your units, but they mean that your sort of officers know how to fight better. Their instruction manual about how to wage proper war gets improved, and so you just get a bunch of bonuses. Doctrines are very, very powerful, very, very, very useful. And also have the advantage of, you don't have to upgrade your troops afterwards to take advantage of it. It happens instantaneously. So we've got all of those things over here. Tons of text. Not only that, but these are not single text. They actually have levels. So for example, our small arms technology over here, this rating here, 2/12, this means if I clicked on this, if I double clicked especially, and add it to my research queue, I would be researching level 2 of small arms out of a maximum of 12 levels. So you can research small arms for the rest of the game, and it will keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading. So this tech tree is very deep and very complicated. It's worth noting that after it finishes researching a tech, it will automatically requeue it at the bottom, so you'll start researching the next level. Some things do not repeat. For example, the engineer brigade here, it's a slightly different color. That is not, and it doesn't have a level marker, right? It doesn't have a /12 or anything like this. This, you just research once to unlock the ability to build engineer brigades, and that's it. So there's some of that. These are another example of just one-shot upgrades over there. All right, before we queue up any research, we're going to have to talk about overall strategy for how we want to play the Soviet Union, and we also have to talk about these bits down here. You don't really have to like memorize what all of these things are, but the numbers here represent how good your country is at doing a certain thing, and this will affect research time. For example, of good and bad stuff, here you can see aircraft carriers. We have 0, we have like a blank in terms of practical knowledge of aircraft carriers. It would mean researching how to make aircraft carriers and improve them would be slower than other things. For example, we can compare light aircraft over here. We have a lot of practical experience with light aircrafts. In fact, we have a 10 there, which is as high as it can get. As far as I know, I might be wrong about this. At least it's as far as it can start. And that means we get a massive boost to researching light aircraft upgrades. But not only that, practical experience with these also means we build them faster, which is really good. How do we get more practical experience? By building things. So by building light aircrafts, we will get more light aircraft practical experience. And when they fight, we will also get that. All the blue things represent this practical experience that you get when you build units or fight with a unit. And they do give you a discount when building those units. They build faster. Plus, they tend to tie into research. All the green ones are theory. You do not get these from fighting or building, and I don't believe, I might be wrong about this, I don't think they impact the construction time, but don't quote me on that one. They do impact a lot of the research. So how do you know what impacts what? Well, if we click on the small arms over here, we get a description about it, and down here it actually shows us what goes into the research rate. So 3 different factors can help minimize the research time of the small arms. This one on the right is the Grand Battle Plan Doctrine level. So if we look at the land doctrines over here, there's Grand Battle Plan over here, and we haven't researched it, we haven't unlocked it, and where's the symbol for it? Right over here, Grand Battle Plan Doctrine. You can see we just have a dash. So we have a 0 rating in this. So we are not going to get the discount from our Grand Battle Plan Doctrine theory. However, only 10% of Grand Battle Plan Doctrine would contribute to a discount over here. It's basically insignificant in terms of cheapening the research cost of this tech. Much more notably is the Infantry Practical. 60% of our possible discount comes from this, and we have a 2.5 in Infantry Practical. It's not that high, but it does give us a bit of a boost. In fact, or rather, it gives us not as much of a penalty. We'd actually get a 50% research penalty speed from Grand Plan Doctrine. But because it only counts 10%, this basically only slows us down by 5%, right? 10% of 50% is 5%. Here, we actually are being slowed down 25% because our infantry practical isn't that high. Well, 60% of 25, whatever the math comes out to that, like 17, 18% penalty. And then over here, infantry practical, we still got that 25% research speed penalty, but it only applies 30%. So the best way to get discounts on our research of small arms will be to get more infantry practical skills. So if we can build more infantry and we can fight with our infantry, these will become cheaper over time. So looking at that, you can use this as a basis for how should this country fight. Clearly, as a Soviet Union, I'd be hard-pressed doing aircraft carriers and capital ship stuff. We're not as bad for destroyers. Actually, our destroyer experience is pretty good. Destroyers are great for escorting convoys and also destroying other people's convoys. But we're mostly going to focus on land. So right now our infantry is not great, but we're going to build a lot of it, so it'll get there. Militia is actually better. We can research militia and build militia quite a bit faster. Militia is like a weaker, less well-equipped version of infantry. And they tend to be pretty good for home guard duties, which isn't bad. Our mobile unit practical isn't bad. Our armor practical is fantastic, and our theory, our automotive theory, is actually pretty good as well. So tanks are going to be something in the future. Anyway, let's queue up some key techs over here. We've done enough sort of naval gazing. Before we start building the actual military stuff, I'm going to queue up some stuff that helps our country overall. In industry, there's a lot of really good stuff for that. Because we basically have unlimited resources as the Soviet Union, we don't have to worry so much about any of these that improve production. I suppose there could be something to be said about more oil refining so that we can refine more of our oil into fuel. We may want to look into that at some point, but mostly we can avoid this. Industrial production and efficiency is really, really good. This one gives us more industrial capacity, and this one lets us use our industrial capacity more effectively. We're going to want that. That will make us build things faster. So we're going to want to start on this right away. Absolutely. Under secret text, we're going to probably not mess around with this. We could do some rockets later on, but I think mostly we're going to leave this off. Under theory, if you want to play your country in a way that it doesn't naturally do it, right? Like, let's say we really, really wanted to do lots of naval stuff. We might want to go and research better naval engineering so that we can get discounts and everything in the future. Most people agree that this is not worth it almost ever. It's not a good idea. Maybe the nuclear research, but other than that, it's really not very worthwhile. However, there are 3 things on this page that are not actual theory. They just, I don't know, they needed the space or something like that. And this involves the transportation of supply. Well, both of these involve the transportation of supply in a sense, and then there's civil defense over here, which improves your repair rate. Repair rate's not the most critical thing early on, although it's still very, very nice. Gets your units back in action a lot faster. But these are very good. So supplies, units require supplies to just keep existing, especially if they're fighting. They use a lot of supplies. They don't magically take that from your stockpile. Instead, supply actually flows out from your capital, or ports sometimes, but mostly from your capital, and literally flows 1 province per day until it reaches the target unit. So your unit will request supplies from the capital, and they will slowly drift in that direction. Along the way, they will actually lose a little bit of supply along every step. So by taking this, we will lose less supply to waste along the way. So very, 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 very good for us to get that. And supply throughput, I believe, will just help the supply go a little bit faster. Or every province has a capacity about how much supply can flow through it at any given day. So it'll either make it flow faster, or it'll simply let you have more supplies per province, which effectively helps goods move faster as well to your front line. So they're very valuable. We will want civil defense. I may hold off a little while longer. Doctrines, as I mentioned, are stupendously good. We basically want, like, all the doctrines we can get, especially, you know, so it's a cheaper way to upgrade things. And we can definitely start on that. You'll notice that all the texts have a few other icons here. The number here in the colored circle, well, the circle's just black, but the colored number inside represents the difficulty of researching this particular tech, and it's a factor of these things over here. So because we have very low, what is this? Spearhead doctrine and land combat experience. We have 0 spearhead doctrine, and we have very low combat experience. It is very, very slow going for us to research this. We'd be better off if we'd researched spearhead doctrine first. This would speed this up. There's also a year. This is the year that you're sort of expected that this technology is like up to date. If you're researching something that has a higher year than the current year, you'll get a research penalty. And if you're ever researching something that's 2 or more years ahead, it'll actually give you a little pop-up over here to let you know that, like, this is really not efficient. Do you sometimes want to do this? Sometimes, yes. If we go back to the industry tab, right here we have mechanical computing machine. This will give us more research efficiency. So even though it's ahead of time, I think, especially for a country of our size that's got a decent amount of leadership, I think it's well worth going ahead and queuing this up, even though right now it's inefficient. You can see we get a little notice over here, hey, it's 2 years ahead of time. And you can see when these texts are going to finish, right? Most of these are going to finish in 36 and May, August and August, right? And those are factors of, you know, various modifiers that we've got going on. This one will not finish until October of 37. Much slower to research because it's so far ahead of time. It still means we will research it, we will end up having this a few months before we were supposed to. And actually, I think this number will improve a bit. Once January 1st of 37 comes around, it'll no longer be 2 years ahead of time. It'll only be 1 year ahead of time. Its penalty will drop. So I think in the end, we'll get it before October. So I think it's probably worth going ahead and doing that. We definitely want to have education in here. Education gives us more leadership, which is this thing here, which affects how much research we have, among other things. It's very valuable. Agriculture is also quite nice to get more manpower. We may as well start accumulating that right away. I'm trying to think if that's all the stuff I want from over here. Oh, we could start working on some of these doctrines. I mean, we'll want the Spearhead Doctrine at some point. Okay, before I work on these, I want to make sure to start researching in the armor tree. So in the armor tree, you get your tanks, mostly, plus some other things, but mostly it's about the tanks. And you can see we start with the ability already unlocked for light tank brigades. Now, light tanks are very, very fast. They are great for fast attacks, and Germany starts with quite a few light tanks at the start of the game, and in fact, most of its attack against Poland will likely involve some light tank divisions, and that's one of the reasons it's actually able to rip through Poland so quickly. Tanks are faster than infantry. I mean, all tanks are faster than infantry, but light tanks in particular are extraordinarily fast. Then there's medium tanks. Medium tanks are not as fast as light tanks, but you get so much more bang for your buck. They are more expensive to build, but the power of a medium tank more than overwhelms its cost differential to the light tank brigade. And in the current game balance, medium tanks are probably your most powerful, potent fighting force. Heavy tanks are more powerful than medium tanks. They're also more slow and considerably more expensive. Whether you use heavy tanks, I think, depends on exactly what your strategy is, and maybe what kind of practical and strategy and theory you have in terms of making these researches cheaper. Super heavy tanks are weird. They actually don't count as a regular unit. They actually count as a support unit. They're basically just like a ginormous artillery. Super heavy tanks are very slow, although, still faster, I suppose, probably than guys walking, I suspect. Now, we will want medium tanks as the Soviet Union. We can get a lot of stuff done with these medium tanks. They're going to be, well, the infantry is going to be the backbone of our army, but I suppose the medium tanks are going to be the legs. We cannot start researching this until we have all the light tank upgrades to level 2. So I definitely want to start researching every single light tank upgrade here, because I want to get them to level 2 as quickly as possible so I can start researching medium tanks and get them unlocked. We may be tempted to level these all the way up to level 3, and the reason is, once these all 4 of these are at level 3, we can then research self-propelled artillery brigades. Artillery is fantastic. It does a lot of damage, and it's a support brigade, which means it doesn't take up combat with, and we'll talk about that later, but that's very good for us. Artillery adds huge amounts of damage. We can already build artillery at the start, but just slow-moving artillery. And the artillery at the start, we're never going to want to attach that to anything other than infantry, because attaching artillery to, say, a light tank brigade, well, then your whole division only moves as fast as your artillery, which means why the hell would you use tanks in the first place? Especially light tanks, you're losing all the advantage of speed. However, self-propelled artillery, well, it basically looks like a tank with a giant gun on it. It's artillery that moves on its own in the very same fashion as a tank. So if you do unlock self-propelled artillery brigades, you can attach those to your light tank or even medium tank brigades, giving them much more punching power without sacrificing much in the way of speed. I don't know if we're going to bother going all the way up to this. I think we're probably, because we are not looking to necessarily blitz in the same way that the Germans are looking like, right? We are mostly needing to worry about setting up a very powerful Western front to defend against the most likely eventual German attack. And so I don't think we're going to need these. We're going to be fine with artillery on infantry brigades that are just a lot more static, but I'm going to want the medium tanks. We're going to queue that up. Speaking of infantry, I will want the infantry upgrades over here. I don't know if we'll worry about the militia. You can see we actually are getting, most of these are really cheap. We got a 0 modifier over here in terms of difficulty, which I'm not exactly sure why that is, because we don't have that many modifiers, but it's going to be okay. We're going to want this maxed out at some point, for sure. In particular, the very first war we're going to get involved in is most likely going to be the Winter War against Finland. And because the terrain there is extremely rough, we're not going to really be able to take advantage of tanks over there. We're mostly going to want to do this purely with infantry. So if we can get this leveled up maybe a couple times before the Winter War, we'll be in great shape. Oh yeah. So right now I have 15 projects queued up. The ones in green are the ones that are fully funded for research. Currently, so out of our total leadership of 21.9, we currently have 5.47 assigned to research, which means we're going to be researching 5 projects at full speed, and then a 6th project will be researching at about half of its normal speed over here, which is why it's orange, and these guys aren't currently being researched. Once this technology is done being researched, it'll get added back to the bottom of the queue, and then everything will sort of move up and you can go through. So you don't need to match your research to the number of things queued up here. We get a little bit of options, but we do have to allocate our leadership. Now, we don't need a whole lot of diplomacy, right? We need a little bit to maintain what I've set up, and then ideally we'd like a few of these points to add up, you know, just a fraction of a point per day, because then our automated trade, because you do need to spend some of your diplomatic influence to set up a trade route, so this will let our automatic trade routes sort of continue to get developed. So I'm going to go ahead and put this at like, I don't know, 2.5, something like that, and then I'm going to lock that in place. Espionage we haven't talked about yet. We really don't need a whole lot of espionage as the common term either. So I'm going to lock this somewhere around 2 to start off with, and then most likely we're going to even bring this down later on. I don't need to be exact, but what the hell, satisfying. Here's the number of free spies, like spies that are just sitting idle. Right now it's 0. I'm going to want to build up some, just to know that I haven't run out of spies for my goals, but I really am not going to need that many. Finally, we get officers. This ratio here is how many officers you have for all of your brigades and divisions and so on and so forth. You need a certain ratio of officers to regular soldiers for your army to operate efficiently. This ratio can actually go above 100%. It caps at 140%. And when you start fighting, you're really going to want it to be there. But we're not going to be fighting for a while. We don't need that many officers. Plus, because of our current political policies, we are going to get like sort of a crap amount of officers. It's not really going to get bang for our buck. So what I'm going to do is actually bring my officer thing all the way down to 0 at this point, because I'm okay with the officer count to go down for now. We'll rebuild it later on. And what it does, it means I have more research points. In fact, I currently have 17.41 research points. I only have 15 projects queued, so actually would be wasting some of my research right now. So I should go and queue some more stuff up. I think I'm going to go ahead and unlock all the basic aircraft stuff. So we're pretty good at fighters. We're going to make use of fighters like interceptors to make sure that we don't lose control over the air too much. And so I think unlocking all the basic bits for our fighter crafts is a good idea, and we'll probably start leveling them up later on. I quite like multi-role fighters as well. So now we have 19 projects, so they're not all being researched simultaneously, but I'm pretty okay with that. So that brings us to the end of technology. We're going to put a cut in here. Oh yes, that's right, I did the diplomatic influence. I'm going to put a cut in this video. When we come back, we're going to finish politics, intelligence, and then we're going to start talking about how to organize our order of battle, which is a beast of a job to do. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.